In the dead of winter during World War II, when snow covered the ground and supply trains were bombed or diverted to the front, fresh food did not simply vanish from civilian tables. Families across Europe and parts of North America were still harvesting leafy greens in January. Not because they had greenhouses or electricity, but because they understood cold frames in a way most people no longer do. These were not gardening hobbies. They were survival systems refined under pressure, passed quietly between neighbours and perfected through trial, failure and hunger. Today, when winter produce is shipped thousands of miles and food systems depend on fuel and timing, these old methods suddenly matter again. What you're about to hear are 10 forgotten World War II cold frame techniques that produced food when winter was at its harshest. And every one of them can still be used today with basic materials and disciplined thinking. Why cold frames became essential civilian infrastructure during the war. Cold frames were not optional during World War II. They were a response to rationing, fuel shortages and unreliable imports. Governments encouraged food production, but it was civilians who figured out how to extend the growing season without coal, oil or electricity. A cold frame was essentially a low-profile, ground-based growing structure that trapped solar heat while shielding crops from wind and frost. The brilliance was not the structure itself, but how it was placed, managed and stocked. Families treated cold frames like food banks in the soil, and they were checked daily with the same seriousness as a stove or pantry. How sun alignment was treated as a non-negotiable rule. One of the most critical World War II techniques was strict southern exposure. Cold frames were always oriented to capture the lowest winter sun, often angled slightly forward so the glass or salvaged window faced the sun directly. This was not guesswork. Families observed shadows throughout the day and placed frames where sunlight lingered longest. Today, this translates directly. A cold frame placed against a south-facing wall or hedge can gain several degrees of warmth without any added insulation, often making the difference between stunted greens and steady growth. Why soil depth was kept shallow for winter production. Modern gardeners often assume deeper soil is better, but World War II cold frames used surprisingly shallow beds. The reason was heat retention. Shallow soil warms faster during the day and releases heat upward at night, protecting roots from freezing. Families layered compost, leaf mould, and garden soil no more than 6 to 8 inches deep. To apply this today, focus on rich, biologically active soil rather than depth. Warm soil feeds plants even when air temperatures drop below freezing. Now, glass management was really key for preventing both freezing and overheating. Another often forgotten practice was daily glass adjustment. You see, cold frames weren't just sealed shut all winter. On sunny days, folks would prop the glass lids open just a bit to let out excess heat and moisture, which helped prevent rot and disease. Before dusk, those lids were closed tightly again, trapping in the day's warmth. This routine took a fair bit of discipline, but it kept the greens healthy right through the deep winter. Modern growers can do much the same by venting their cold frames whenever the inside temperature gets a bit too high for the plants, even in the middle of January. Now, here's why straw and burlap mattered a whole lot more than modern insulation back then. During the war, materials were scarce, but things like straw, old sacks and burlap were easy to come by. Families would layer these over their cold frames at night during really harsh cold snaps. Then take them off again during the day. This made for a flexible insulation system, not just a permanent barrier. These days you can use old blankets, burlap or straw mats in the same way, adapting your protection to the weather rather than locking your plants into just one condition. Crop selection was, well, ruthlessly practical. Only certain greens earned a place in those winter cold frames. Spinach, mush, kale, endive and winter lettuce varieties were favourites because they just kept growing, even in low light and cold soil. Gardeners during the war didn't experiment for the fun of it. Seeds were picked for their reliability, not novelty. Applying that now means choosing cold-hardy varieties, bred especially for winter production, and honestly resisting the urge to cram in crops that just won't make it. Staggered planting, you see, was key to ensuring a continuous harvest. Instead of planting everything all at once, families would sow seeds weeks apart. This way there was a sort of rolling harvest. Mature greens could be picked while the younger plants kept on growing. The end result? A steady supply of food rather than a cycle of feast and famine. A modern cold frame, you know, benefits from the same approach. Just plant smaller amounts more frequently and you'll keep fresh greens on hand right through the winter. Moisture control, well, it was absolutely crucial for preventing winter crop failure. Watering was done sparingly and only in the morning. You see, wet soil at night increased the risk of freezing and disease. Whilst gardeners, they relied on careful observation instead of fixed schedules, watering only when the soil was dry just beneath the surface. This technique is still essential today, especially in enclosed winter systems where evaporation happens slowly. Wind breaks, you know, mattered just as much as the frame itself. Cold frames were often built behind hedges, fences or walls. Blocking wind reduced heat loss dramatically. Even today in modern yards, temporary barriers made from pallets or boards can, well, improve cold frame performance by several degrees. Seed saving. Now, that was how families ensured next winter's survival. Folks would save seed from the strongest winter survivors. Over time, this produced plants adapted to cold frame life. And today, saving seed from winter-hardy greens slowly builds resilience into your own food system. These techniques, they still matter now, and here's why. Cold frame methods were born from necessity, not just theory. They work because they respect heat, soil biology and, well, human attention. In an age of fragile supply chains and rising food costs, producing greens in January is no longer just nostalgic. It's practical. So, if this kind of serious, history-based survival knowledge matters to you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who understands the value of food security. These methods kept families alive once, and honestly, they can do it again. The final siren.